Hello, I'm Nikolai Jellick, a police officer and member and representative of the Fraternal Order of Police of here in Kentucky. I'm here today to speak to you about Representative Adam Koenig's House Bill 296 and to respond to his recent op-ed piece in the River City News of Northern Kentucky. House Bill 296 is a bill that will dramatically change the way our workers' compensation system works here in Kentucky. Representative Koenig is correct when he said that we criticized his bill. We have criticized it because it is a bad bill. It is a bad bill for the men and women of law enforcement and for any Kentuckian who works hard for a living and is subject to on-duty or on-the-job injury. It is bad because unless you are totally disabled or have lost a limb, an eye, teeth, or your hearing, the bill will limit the medical benefits for all other not on-duty or work-related injuries. We are against this bill because it hurts cops and workers who are still working and wanting to keep working. At the end of the day, the bill only truly helps businesses and stands to hurt working people. Representative Koenig claims that these changes are, quote, long overdue, despite the fact that the task force that examined this issue last year reported that overall employer premiums are way down and that asset surplus and profits are way up for insurance companies, which indicates that the system is working very well. Despite what Representative Koenig claims in his letter, he never reached out to the FOP. And when we finally met with him, he simply told us that if we were not able to operate within the bounds of his bill, that we should, quote, find another job. In order to be clear about what this bill will do, and to not mislead you, as Representative Koenig so ironically accuses the FOP of doing, I invite you all to click on the link with this video to the LRC's webpage to look at the literal and exact content of this bill. We can look at it together, and I will show you the parts that concern us, which are the parts that Representative Koenig says are improvements to the system and that will protect injured workers in Kentucky. To begin with, Representative Koenig stated in his letter that he has always stood behind the responsibility to take care of first responders who are injured in the line of duty for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, some of the provisions of this bill do not demonstrate that. The first section that is of concern to us is the part that limits workers' compensation medical benefits to 15 years from the date of injury. In other words, if you suffer an on-duty injury this summer and are able to stay on the job and keep working with the help of periodic medical procedures for issues stemming from that initial injury, your benefits would be cut off after 15 years. 15 years, unless you're injured after age 56. At that point, those benefits would be cut off at age 70, or 4 years from the date of injury, whichever is later. If you wanted to keep working and were able to do so, you would be forced to go on your own personal insurance for any continuing care and be personally responsible for any and all related payments from that point forward. I don't know about you, but most police officers these days have insurance benefits that are very expensive with high deductibles. You can find the part of the bill, Section 1, paragraphs 3 and 4. In all permanent partial disability claims not involving an injury described in subsection 10 of this section, the employer's obligation to pay the benefits specified in this section shall continue for 780 weeks from the date of injury or date of last exposure. 780 weeks is equal to 15 years. Paragraph 4 says, except in claims described in subsection 2 of this section, the employer's obligation to pay the benefits specified in the section shall terminate as of the date the employee reaches the age of 70, or 4 years after the employee's date of injury, or date of last exposure, whichever last occurs. The subsection 10 that it refers to is on page 3. This is the part about the loss of limbs, etc., and has the short list of conditions that will allow for lifetime care. It says, when a compensable injury or occupational disease results in the amputation of an arm, leg, or foot, or the loss of hearing, or the enucleation of the eye, or loss of teeth, the employer shall pay for, in addition to the other medical, surgical, and hospital treatment enumerated in subsection 1 of this subsection, a modern artificial member, and where required, proper braces may reasonably be required at the time of the injury and thereafter during disability. The next section that is extremely troublesome for us is the part where Representative Koenig wants to have your workers' comp medical care dictated to you by a commissioner, namely the Commissioner of the Department of Workers' Claims, and not your doctor. Your doctor being the one who is actually treating you and who knows you personally as a patient, the one with the medical training and expertise. On page 9, Section 2, paragraph 8A, you will find this part about treatment guidelines. It reads, the Commissioner shall develop or adopt practice, parameters, or treatment guidelines
for clinical practice for use by medical providers under this chapter, including but not limited to chronic pain management treatment and opioid use, and promulgate administrative regulations in order to implement the developed or adopted practice parameters or treatment guidelines on or before December 31st, 2018. The Commissioner may adopt any parameters for clinical practice as developed and updated by the Federal Agency for Health Care Policy Research. Or the Commissioner may adopt other parameters for clinical practice which are developed by qualified bodies as determined by the Commissioner, with periodic updating based on data collected during the application of the parameters. This kind of government bureaucratic overreach that steps in between you and your doctor is not a good idea. The last part of this bill that we will look at is the part about what they call cumulative trauma injury. These are injuries that happen over time and can come from small things that we are required to do on the job. Over time and an active career, they can sometimes add up to significant problems. Representative Koenig feels that if you don't seek medical help for these injuries within 5 years, or the health issues don't appear within 5 years, then you will not be eligible for workers' comp. The cumulative trauma injury restrictions are on page 15, section 5, paragraph 3. It reads, "The right to compensation under this chapter resulting from work-related exposure to cumulative trauma injury shall be barred unless notice of the cumulative trauma injury is given in accordance with subsection 1 of the section, and unless an application for adjustment of claim for compensation shall have been made with the Commissioner within 5 years after the last injurious exposure to the cumulative trauma."
We all have coworkers who can be too proud to seek medical help for these type of things until they have to. These folks would be just left on their own even though they were injured just by showing up to work and doing their job. It is unfortunate that we are at this point where Representative Koenig feels he must defend himself in this bill by arguing that we are the ones who are misleading the first responders of Kentucky, when it is he who is trying to sell us this as something that supports us. Perhaps the most critical aspect of our jobs that sets us apart is that it is our duty and professional responsibility to run towards and into situations that expose us to very high likelihood of injury. In order to do our jobs effectively, we must have absolute confidence that if we are injured on duty, our workers' comp will take care of us and get us back on the job and back on with our lives. Until this bill has all the restrictions and limits on workers' comp benefits for on-duty injuries removed, we cannot and will not support this bill or any legislation like it. Thank you, and stay safe.